Alright, babe, welcome back to a brand new video. Now, today we're going to be going over all the stuff that we are going to be losing with the brand new rotation that's going to be coming September 1st. That is going to be Primal Clash and on. So, we're going to be losing the sets X and Y. We're going to be losing Flash Fire. We're going to be using Furious Fist. And we're also going to be losing the set Phantom Forces. All of these sets had some pretty big cards in it. I think Phantom Forces is probably going to be the biggest set of all of this that we are going to be losing, because we are going to be losing a ton of important stuff in that. Anyways, let's get into it. Alright, so first thing, we'll go from the top to bottom. We'll go with Miltank first. Miltank is basically, we're going to be losing this. Now, this is going to affect those stage 2 decks, because we saw Miltank be played with like stage 2s. We didn't really see it being played that much this format, but it was played with stuff like Empoleon and Dusknoir, but that was way before, X and Y on. But Miltank, still losing it is kind of big, because there may be a stage 2 that comes out that would be a cool partner with Miltank, but unfortunately, it just won't happen. We're also going to be losing Malamar EX. Malamar EX is a pretty, interesting card. It's not really seen much playing competitive. I mean, it was seen play with like a Sceptile deck where you would use Malamar and, put a thing to sleep and then use Sceptile's, attack to knock it out. And Malamar EX is a decent card with like stuff like fairies, because you can play the fairy on it, put them to sleep. And Maximar is always a fun attack. We are losing Malamar EX, which is kind of interesting to see the loss of this card, as it was an interesting card. We're going to be losing Druddigon. Druddigon started seeing play recently with stuff like, Zoark and friends, and it's starting to see a little bit more play now, just because when you put a muscle band on it, you can just Lysander up a Shaman and knock it out, do 110 damage to a Shaman. And Druddigon definitely started to pop up and see more play, but now it's really not going to see much play anymore, as it is going to be gone. We're also going to be losing Noivern. Noivern is a kind of interesting loss, just because Noivern Break worked well with Noivern, but because, Noivern is gone, we're not really going to be seeing it anymore. It had that really good ability, Echolocation, where if this thing was to be attacked, you would flip a coin, and then you could prevent all damage done to that Pokemon if you got heads. And Boom Burst is a decent attack too, you can kind of do some spread damage, but Noivern with Noivern Break was a kind of pretty interesting deck, and it was definitely a tier 3 deck if you wanted to classify it as that, but we are losing Noivern now. We're also losing Aromatisse. Aromatisse is another big one, just because fairy decks really do rely on this card a lot. They really do rely on that ability, Fairy Transfer. But now that Aromatisse is gone, fairy decks, I don't know if they're really going to be able to compete anymore. I mean, you're not going to be able to do the old max potion combo, because, well, you're not going to have Aromatisse. I mean, yeah, it's kind of big to lose Aromatisse, because now fairy decks really will have no competition. Like, Mega Gardevoir EX is probably going to be completely useless now without Aromatisse. So, yeah, Aromatisse is a humongous loss for fairy decks. We're going to be losing Slurpuff. Slurpuff, I mean, it's just a decent card, because it does have that ability, Tasting. We kind of see it play with like Seismitoad EX, stuff like that. Losing Slurpuff is interesting, because, well, there may be a deck that would just use a Slurpuff, kind of like that Seismitoad deck. We're losing Hawlucha, which is another really big loss. Hawlucha was a really good card because of that attack Flying Press. And with the fighting cards that you had to work with, Flying Press could be doing a lot more damage. But we are going to be losing Hawlucha, which is pretty big for fighting decks. Hawlucha's loss is huge. We're going to be losing Baby Lando. This is something I just wanted to point out, because Baby Landorus is a decent card in some fighting decks, because it does have that 10% of power. We're going to be losing Lucario EX. Lucario EX is another pretty huge loss, just because it was such a good card with like Crobats and stuff, and just on its own. However, we do have Zygarde now, but Zygarde doesn't have an awesome looking full art, so ha. But yeah, we are going to be losing Lucario, which is a massive loss. Not the biggest loss, but definitely up there in terms of big things we're going to be losing. We're going to be losing Delphox. Delphox we just saw with a break. Now, it's not really being played that much, but losing the XY Delphox is pretty kind of big. Well, yeah, it's kind of big, just because it does have that ability, Mystical Fire, and that's a great ability. Blaze Ball is also a really good attack, with another card that we're going to be losing that can combo with it. Delphox XY losing is interesting because this could be a decent kind of rogue deck you can run. We're going to be losing Pyroar, which is another interestingly big loss. Not really a huge loss right now. We are getting a Pyroar break in Steam Siege, but unfortunately we're not really going to be able to use it with this Pyroar anymore. This is just such a good card. Intimidating Main is an amazing ability. I mean, we do have stuff like Jolteon now to kind of, I guess, replenish it, but just losing Pyroar is so huge. We're going to be losing Manectric and Mega Manectric. This is probably the second biggest loss that we are going to be losing. Maybe the biggest. Okay, no, it's not the biggest. The biggest loss is coming up, but losing Manectric EX and Mega Manectric is extremely huge. These are two incredibly powerful cards, and the fact that we're losing them, it's really saddening. However, there was a set that kind of had like Mega Beedrill and stuff. Now, some of these cards were actually in that set. I think Lucario and Mega Lucario were in that set. Mega Manectric and Manectric were in that set. So, if anything, that set may, bring back Mega Manectric to the format. But, yeah, losing Mega Manectric and Manectric EX, it's just such a huge loss. And it's going to have a huge impact on the format. We're going to be losing Aegislash too. Aegislash is a fairly good loss just because it had that ability Mighty Shield, which was a really powerful ability. People kind of use this in like weird like Wailord stall decks and stuff, but losing Aegislash EX, it is kind of big. We're going to be losing Bronzong, which is another really huge loss because Bronzong is an amazing card thanks to having that ability Metal Links, which basically acts as a metal version of Dynamotor. Losing Bronzong is going to suck because these decks that really rely on energy acceleration really are going to struggle. We're going to see a huge drop-off in Metal. We're going to be also seeing like a huge drop-off. We're going to be seeing a huge drop-off in Fairy and Metal, and probably, yeah, Fairy and Metal for sure, just because Bronzong is such a powerful card for Metal decks, but now that it is gone, it's really going to make Metal decks kind of bad. Dialga is another loss. This just is a loss just because it is basically the big attacker you would run a Metal deck sometimes, but now it's gone, so it's kind of big there. We're losing Heatran, which is, oh, whoops, kind of lagging. Oh my god, I don't know what the hell's going on. Okay, there we go. We are going to be losing Heatran, which is another big one. I mean, I've seen Heatran and stuff that don't even run Bronzong, just because it's a good, like, Regice counter and stuff. It's a good non-EX attacker, and we are losing it, which sucks. We're also losing Gengar EX. This is another fairly semi-huge loss. Gengar isn't really seen play right now with the Dark Quarter ability, but losing it will suck because you never know. We might get some cool partners with Gengar in the future that, well, we won't be able to combo it with anymore in Standard. Now, time for the biggest and probably the best loss out of all. Like, if anything would to leave the format, this was definitely going to be what we were going to lose. We're losing Night Marchers. We're going to be losing both Joltik, Pumpkaboo. I know I'm putting it in here, but we are going to be losing Joltik, Pumpkaboo, and Lampent. They are going to be out of the format forever, I think. Now, there's some good news to this, because obviously with Phantom Forces being gone, we're going to be losing our Lampents, our Joltiks, and our Pumpkaboos. However, there is going to be a set that it releases in Japan that does have an entire Night March reprint in it, including, the 3 of those. If that does come to America, we will get Night March back. But I do feel like the loss of these, it's just so relieving to lose Night March. Honestly, I'm so happy Night March is gone. You don't understand. We're going to be losing Trevenant with the item lock, which basically makes Trevenant Break even more unplayable. I mean, you could play with the other Trevenant, but like I said, I mean, not having Forest Curse is just so huge. You're going to have to like make a crazy Trevenant Break Vileplume deck now, just to make the deck return, but like, just not having the Forest Curse Trevenant is going to really make Trevenant Break really, really, really bad. Now, we're going to also lose Crobat, which is another fairly huge loss, because, I mean, we still have Zubat and Golbat, because they got reprinted in Generations, but we're losing Crobat, which is big, because Surprise Bite is what really makes those decks kind of good, because it allows you to do 50 damage in total, but now you're only doing 20, and you're going to have to stack Golbats and stuff. So losing Crobat, it is kind of big. I mean, you could kind of use stuff like Devo Sprays and stuff like that, but like I said, losing Crobat is big. We're also going to be losing, if the image wants to pop up, we're also going to be losing this X and Y Greninja. Now, I don't think this is that big of a deal because this Greninja isn't really that playable in the Greninja Break deck, because you still have the other Greninja with the awesome attack, Shadow Stitching, and then you also have the other attack, which does 80 for 1 energy. But losing Greninja is kind of important just because Water Shuriken is still a decent attack to have, ability, sorry, but we are losing it. So, I mean, I'm not really upset about that. Probably the second biggest loss in this entire thing is going to be Seismitoad EX, just because of Quaking Punch. Quaking Punch, not having to worry about Seismitoad EX anymore, is going to be huge. Seismitoad, we all know, is one of the most annoying, probably the most annoying deck to play against, but now that Seismitoad EX is gone from the format, that's going to be amazing. I mean, it was already kind of weak without lasers and stuff, but not having it now is just going to be awesome. So yeah, those are all the important Pokemon that I feel like we're going to be losing. You know, you're probably like, where's Raichu, where's this, where's that? Well, they're all reprinted, so there's no point in including them. Now we're going on to the items, and there's a lot of items in here that are pretty huge. The first one, and probably the biggest of the items, is going to be Battle Compressor. Without Battle Compressor, honestly, I don't really see any hope of Vespiquen being playable anymore. Just Battle Compressor made those decks so powerful. We're going to have to rely on Ultra Balls and other crazy combos to make Vespiquen powerful again, but yeah, without Battle Compressor, Vespiquen decks really are going to be getting hit hard. So it's really big to see Battle Compressor leave the format. We're also going to be losing Red Card, which isn't that big, but it's still a decent disruption card to run. I've seen decks kind of manipulate, you know, Red Card. We're losing Robosub, which is an interesting loss because it was kind of used in hit and switch Gengar decks, but it's gone now, so no more of that. We're going to be losing Sacred Ash, which is another big one, just because Sacred Ash allows you to shuffle 5 Pokemon from your discard pile into your deck. That is just such an amazing card. Some people consider it better than Super Rod, but we do still have Super Rod, so Sacred Ash, you're not gone forever. Your legacy lives on, Kappa. We're losing Starly Megaphone. Starly Megaphone is another fairly largest loss. Actually, never mind, it is a large loss. What am I saying? Megaphone is a huge card that we're losing, because now we're not really going to have many ways to get rid of your opponent's tool cards, which is going to be huge. So losing Starly Megaphone, it is massive. We're also going to be losing Super Scoop Up, which is another big one, because Super Scoop Up was used in bat decks and stuff. So now Super Scoop Up, now that it's gone, it's not really going to see much play anymore. So yeah, I mean, Super Scoop Up's loss is kind of big for those decks that can abuse Super Scoop Up. We're losing Target Whistle, which is another interesting one, because this card recently started popping up in stuff like Zoroark decks and, you know, Mega Ray decks even. But yeah, Target Whistle is gone, which will affect those decks. It's not really a huge loss, but it still affects them. We're losing Trick Shovel. Trick Shovel is another fairly large one, just because those, you know, Bunnelby decks and Houndoom Bunnelby decks, item mill decks, basically now without Trick Shovel, those decks, I mean, they're not going to become worse, but it definitely will affect them. Now, probably a huge supporter we're going to be losing is AZ. AZ, a lot of people consider a staple in any deck. Just having one of them is really good, but AZ is gone now, which, that's pretty big for the format. I mean, a lot of decks are going to suffer without AZ. It's definitely going to kind of slow down the game. Some people might have to go with 2 switches now. Just losing AZ is such an important loss, and it does suck to see that card go. We're going to be losing Blacksmith, which is another huge one, because now this is going to make most fire decks not really that playable anymore. Like, Entei Charizard is no longer going to be playable anymore because of Blacksmith. You know what I mean? So Blacksmith loss is a very huge loss for fire decks. You know, we're losing that fire acceleration, we're losing that metal acceleration, and we're losing that fairy acceleration. They're all gone now, which is really big for those kind of decks. We're losing Karina, which it is still fairly large for fighting decks. In fact, this is actually huge for fighting decks. This is such a good card to run in fighting decks. But now Karina is going to be gone, so now we're not really going to be seeing Karina anymore, which that's going to be big for fighting decks. I mean, we're still going to be seeing fighting decks. We still have Strong Energy, we still have Regirock and Zygarde, but we're losing Karina, which is just really tragic. We're losing Zerosic, which that is still a fairly large loss, because some decks do play one of these in their deck, so losing Zerosic, it's not going to be huge, but it's going to be important, because some people do like running, you know, a couple of Zerosics in their deck. But yeah, Zerosic is big. Dimension Valley we're going to be losing. That is a huge card. That's going to make Psychic decks even worse now. So those Psychic decks really won't be good then again anymore, like Trevenant Break decks. Really, they're going to be suffering with the loss of Item Lock, Trevenant, and Dimension Valley. We're going to be losing a Fighting Stadium, which is another big loss for Fighting decks. Just Fighting decks really are good with Fighting Stadium, but now that it's gone, those Fighting decks really won't be able to kind of put up a fight anymore against the X's. I mean, they will, but yeah, Fighting Stadium is a big loss for them. We're losing Focus Sash, which is another humongous loss for Fighting type decks. Fighting types really do rely on Focus Sash, but now that Focus Sash is gone, really Fighting decks they're not going to be as good anymore. You're not going to really be able to just shove a Fighting type up there, attack them, take a hit, and, you know, kind of do that anymore. So that's really huge. Fighting decks are going to suffer a lot from Focus Sash. We're going to be losing Heart Charm, which is just kind of a small loss. Not really too important there. But we are going to be losing Muscle Band, which is a humongous loss. We do have Fighting Fury Belt, which some people consider to be better than Muscle Band because it gives you the extra HP but less damage. But Muscle Band's loss is still big because some people like to use Muscle Band over Fighting Fury Belt. Having that extra 20 damage is still really important. But now that Muscle Band is gone, that is going to make a huge impact. Another huge one is Headringer. Headringer is a very, very good card for Disruption. But yeah, Headringer is going to be gone, which is just big. Losing Headringer is huge, and that's really going to suck because without Headringer, you know, some decks, you know, that use that kind of disruption antic with, you know, Headringer really aren't going to be good anymore. You know, we're also losing Jamming Net. I mean, we're losing Headringer, so we're going to be losing Jamming Net. Now, the final two energies we're going to be losing, we're going to be losing Herbo, which doesn't really matter. But we are going to be losing Mystery, which is kind of big for those Psychic type decks. You know, Trevenant Break plays a couple of these, I think. Alakazam's playing a couple of these now. But yeah, without that, those Psychic decks may get hit a little bit. I mean, Psychic decks are already going to lose a lot with Dimension Valley. But yeah, that is, I feel like, all we're going to be losing with the rotation of PC and non. I almost said XY for some reason. But yeah, this is all I feel like we're going to be losing. Comment down below if you think we're going to be losing anything else. Did I miss anything out? What do you guys think of PC and non? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Let me know. And thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos, and goodbye.